And that's like, in a sense, a part of where the real rebel thing came from too. It's like, we're told the ways that we're supposed to be in this world. We're told how it is. And it doesn't matter whether it's through corporations or organized religion or whatever, social media. We've been fed these messages and these stories about this is what it is to be human, and this is what you do, and this is what your life is supposed to look like. And if you don't do this by this time, then you're failing, and all this stuff. And it's like we're totally living on the external. We're looking to the external world for approval. We're looking at it, to tell us when we can jump and, what's correct for us. And books like that bring us back into ourselves. Like I like to say, there is this wise version of you, or this wise being inside you all the time, and they're always there, and they're just chilling, and you can slow down and tap into that wisdom at any time. It's always there. And when you do, there's always this like sage advice you'll get, or it will say something like, you're okay, just chill, you'll be fine.
I'm Katie Buemann, a jaded, hopelessly romantic, health-conscious party girl searching for meaning. And my mission is simple: to make life better, for myself and for you. I believe real change always comes from within, and the Better You podcast was born to discover hidden parts of ourselves and our stories. A safe place where we have real, honest conversations with people from all walks of life to help better understand ourselves so we can become better versions of ourselves. So come along on this journey of discovery with me so you can become a better you. Welcome back to another episode of the Better You podcast, where we focus on better understanding our relationship with ourselves. I'm your host, Katie Buemann. Thank you so much for being here. I know you have lots of podcast options, and I'm just so thankful that you've chosen mine for the day. Well, I can't believe it. May is finally here. It kind of felt like April was the longest month ever, which was weird because March was the longest month ever, and then somehow April surpassed it. But it is May. I don't know what's going on where you are in the world, but here in Jacksonville, Florida, we are seeing some positive trending and starting to slowly open stuff back up, which I'm pretty excited about because it is just in time for my birthday. So this is my birthday month. My birthday is actually it'll be a week from when this episode airs. A week and 2 days. It is Thursday, May 14th. And so actually then next week on the podcast, we'll have an episode that, I don't know, kind of ties in a little bit to my birthday. So we talked to Paul Kuhn, who is a sound practitioner, teacher, intuitive guide, and he studies the gene keys, which it's kind of similar to like having your birth chart read, or a little bit like a human design, in that they're both based off your birthday, the date, place, and time, like the exact time that you were born. But the gene keys it's like a combination of all these ancient wisdoms, and it helps guide you to a deeper understanding of yourself and your true potential. And it's based off like these 64 traits or characteristics of life and nature and us. And I don't know, I'm probably doing a horrible job explaining it, but it's super interesting. And so Paul and I talk about, first of all, like what it means to really listen to life and everything that life is trying to communicate with us. And then he actually goes through my Gene Keys profile. And I'm telling you guys, it is really spot on. I mean, it's not supposed to be like a prescriptive, like a predicting the future type thing. It's more a general understanding of who you are and your potential and maybe what's holding you back from that. But I mean, there were certain parts where he kind of talks about how it's showing my life in like 3 different phases. And so far, I mean, my life is those phases to a T. So really cool stuff. Very excited about that episode. But I don't want to take away from my excitement for this week's episode. I absolutely love this conversation. Like seriously, when I listened back through it, I was just like smiling the whole time. I feel like Katie and I are soul cousins or have known each other in another life or something, because I don't know, I felt very connected with her. So she is the host of the Real Rebel podcast. And if you haven't checked that out yet, then definitely do. My personal favorites are the solo episodes that she does on Mondays, but she has some incredible guests and interviews as well. So definitely check that out. If you enjoy this episode, there are a couple other episodes that we reference and that I think you'll enjoy as well. So we talk a little bit about women and anger, and I actually have like a huge aha moment in this conversation about like my relationship with anger. So if that topic interests you, then definitely listen to episode 35, Understanding Anger by Gender with Soraya Shamali. And then towards the end of the conversation, we talk a little bit about spirit guides. And so if you're into that kind of thing, then you're definitely going to want to listen to episode 19, Modern Spirituality and Connecting with Our Intuition with Nikki Novo. You can kind of just scroll back through in the podcast and find both those episodes. I think you will enjoy them. And if you're listening to this podcast, then you likely care about your health and well-being on some level. So I want to make sure you all know about the shop page that I have on my website. You can find it at CaseyMain.com/shop. And basically what I'm doing is compiling a list of like products and brands that I personally use and have switched to over the years in terms of shampoo, conditioner, body wash, face creams, makeup, even like household cleaners, everything. And I've switched over to these products because they are more natural, more organic, and don't contain unnecessary harmful chemicals. So a couple years ago, I found out about the app called Think Dirty. If you don't already have it on your phone, definitely download it. And how it works is you can like scan the barcode of certain products and it'll pull up the ingredients and let you know how bad they are. And it'll give it a rating kind of from 1, meaning this is a good product, to 10, meaning like this is borderline toxic and has all kinds of harmful chemicals in it. And when I first started playing around with that app, I was really pretty appalled at some of the stuff that I was putting all over my skin and rubbing into my head every day. And I'm just a big believer that we should try and cut out these toxins where possible. And starting with your like shower and bathroom and beauty routine and your cleaning products, like that is a really good and easy place to start. So check out the products listed on my website. Again, that's CaseyMain.com/shop. And then a lot of them actually come with discounts for being a listener of the podcast. And that list is a work in progress. I will continue to add to it as I find more great stuff and I'm able to convince the companies to provide discounts. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about Katie. She is a writer, intuitive mentor, and host of the Real Rebel podcast. The whole premise behind the Real Rebel podcast is about full acceptance of self. It was designed to be a safe place of acceptance and inspiration for those brave souls out there who dare to walk the path of their truth. And in this episode, we discuss so much. So we talk about her path with spirituality and how she got away from it for a while and then found her way back. What it really means to be spiritual, what being a rebel means to her and why she started her podcast, why it's so difficult to be who we really are, the dark night of the soul and how to use perspective to get through it, the difference between masculine and feminine energy and why we all feel so burnt out, tired, and disconnected these days, how to hear, trust, and act on our intuition, the importance of recognizing we are all on our own journey and in our own time. What our discomfort with other people's emotions is showing us about ourselves, and how to know if your spirit guides are trying to communicate with you. Towards the end of the episode, she mentions a lot of great resources and different people who have really helped her along her journey. I will find all of those and link to all of those in the show notes so that you can easily access them. So that is it. We're going to go ahead and jump into this amazing conversation with Katie. So I I want to get started just with a little bit of your story and kind of why you started your podcast. Like where and how was it born?
Good question. It's all a blur. Yeah, I think the podcast is really just the container. So it comes out in many different ways, and what I'm talking about comes out is this purpose of mine, this feeling I've had for a really long time, ever since I was a child, that I'm just here, as corny as it sounds, to give love, like, and remind people of who they are, and it's so cliche, it's so self-helpy, it's so all the things, but at the same time I couldn't deny what was the only thing that really felt good and the only thing that felt natural to me. Um, and so, yeah, it just comes out. It came out in the form of a podcast. It comes out in the form of writing. Yeah, the container, and it will probably change at some point again in my life. But I just had this, I kept getting this vision of this very powerful vision when I would go walk in the woods, and I had to put that energy somewhere. And so that's that. I mean, it took for freaking ever. I only really started when I was 30. But, these things take time.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
And timing is always perfect. It's just hard to see
Yes.
that often in the moment. I
Ugh.
was reminded by that by you actually earlier today. I went on a walk just to get some fresh air. And so I was listening. I love the audio coffee episodes that you do on Mondays. I just freaking love those. And so the one
Oh.
about be patient,
Mm.
it was like you were speaking to my soul. I was like,
Hmm.
oh, yes. It was just like this great reminder. Even when you said, you're like, so if no one's told you and reminded you yet today, like be
Hmm.
patient with yourself. I was like, oh, yes.
Hmm.
Thank you, Katie.
Hmm.
I will.
Yeah, well, we put so much pressure on ourselves, like, really, and I think that that's a big shift that's happening right now, is we're moving more into a feminine kind of energy. Like I've said in the podcast a few times, the old earth is gone, like, and we're in a new one now, and so the old ways of doing things, they just don't jive. It's like gears grinding. The masculine way of doing things, like, which there's nothing wrong with the masculine way of doing things. We all need structure. We all need, direction and focus, but it's been weighted too far on that side for too long. And so we're burnt out and we're tired, and we've pushed ourselves to the point where we're totally disconnected from our hearts, and we're living our lives from our minds. And so it's just too much pressure. And that's where the pressure comes from. It's like, I must achieve, I must perform, I have to keep up. Like, I got to always be running, I got to always be pushing. And if I'm not doing that, I'm falling behind. And like, that's such, and I'm seeing 222 on my clock now as I say that. So I'm super into that kind of stuff, as you know, but
I love it. No, I love it.
but it's very like, it's too much. Like, it's just too much, and it cuts off the flow to that energy. Like, we don't have to push the boulder up the hill all by ourselves. Like, you can take the brakes off and reconnect with your heart and work with that universal power, and let the universe do the heavy lifting. And there's this story, and I've been having to reframe the story every day to myself. I have to remind myself, you have plenty of time, you have plenty of energy, you have plenty of money. And that is something I just remind myself, and that takes like that pressure off of my heart and my shoulders that I feel, to just be in the grind and work. And I still work and I still get a lot done, but I do it without that self-imposed kind of pressure, and anxiety that comes from, seeing it the other way. And yeah, we need a freaking break. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's I try and do the same thing, kind of live in more of an abundance mindset. I really struggle with it. But I want you to dive into a little bit the masculine versus feminine energies and kind of the old world and stuff. And just explain for listeners who might not really know what that means, because this is why I love. All right, so at first glance, like your podcast, you might think, oh, okay, she interviews, rebels, like people who are just kind of doing their own thing and, bucking the norm, whatever. But you're actually like, you're super spiritual and like
yeah.
super deep. Like, have you always been that way?
I think as a child, yeah, I remember I used to be able to like leave my body. I would go into this one place, this bath in the bathroom. I would sit on the toilet, not like I was going to the washroom, but like just sit on the toilet. And I would, which sounds super weird, but I would actually leave my body, and I would have to remind myself that you're. I remember it being such a revelatory thing that I was a human. It's like, oh, you're a human. You're a human. You're Katie. And it was such a, I had to constantly bring myself back down into my body. And I used to, what's it called? When you dream, lucid dreaming,
Lucid dreaming.
where it's
Mm-hmm.
like you can control your dreams. And I used to fly around the house in my dreams at night and talk to plants. And
Wow.
like, I used to, when my mom was sick, I was really little and she was sick. She had a migraine, and I went out into the garden. I picked all these, I picked all the strawberries and some leaves, and I squished them up, and I like made her a remedy. Like there, I don't know for sure about any of this stuff. I'm not like a wizard at past lives or anything like this, but it's I definitely veered away from it as I grew up. As we do, we're told to fit in this box, and that who we are is, that's weird. Like, oh, you're weird for being that way. So you kind of shave your edges down a bit and make yourself fit into society. And
And then we
y-
lose touch with
yes.
some of those more intuitive parts of ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I definitely veered away from it, but it was always there. And I think that also too, like there's this image in entrepreneurship, especially within female entrepreneurship, which was one of the reasons, not the whole reason, but one of the reasons why the podcast looks the way it does, the branding, and why like I've allowed myself to bleed through into that, because there's a lot of like you have to look a certain way to be a female entrepreneur and have a podcast and do these things, and it has to have like it all looks the same, and it's just the same. It's like the same branding, it's the same person, they're talking the same, doing the same. It's like, where are you? Like, show us who you are. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I just went into it, and I was like, screw it, I'm just going to be exactly who I am, which is me. And there are many labels you could put on me, but maybe I'm a little bit tomboyish, very simplistic in the way that I dress and things like this, but I'm still like super spiritual. That being said, I love rap music and driving around in my
Yes.
Jeep, and like, like before our interview, I was listening to, I'm going to pull up the song. I was like totally jamming out to Dom Kennedy's like new Jeeps song or whatever. And I don't even know the name of it. It's a jam. And so it is that if I'm going to go out there and preach that you should accept yourself and like help people come to a place of acceptance within themselves, I have to do that, or else I'm not walking my talk, and it's totally out of alignment. So, yeah, that's.
Well, I love that because we do tend to kind of have these preconceived notions of what it means to be certain things. So, like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, if you're spiritual, that means, you only listen to classical or meditation
Mhm.
music, and, you don't wear anything that shows off your figure or whatever
Mhm.
our definitions are. And I hope and I think we're getting to a place in life where we're just kind of getting rid of all of those definitions, and instead, like you being like, yeah, I'm super spiritual, but I'm also going to jam out in my car to some super like ghetto rap music. And
Yes.
and if you put me on a dance floor, like my main
Ooh, yeah.
dance move is to shake my booty. And like, I
Shake it.
don't think that makes me less spiritual.
Not not at all, and even more so. It's like is to be spiritual is to be like we're all spiritual. I didn't grow up in a religious household in any way, shape, or form. Our parents, like I had friends that were Christian, and they were like, "Yeah, go to church." Like we just did whatever we. So there was no construct. So it's just I've allowed myself to be and to live and to be a human is being a spirit in a body. You're spiritual whether you try to or not. And that's, to be spiritual is to be yourself, is to allow yourself to become the fully realized version of your soul, of what's inside you, to allow that to come to the outside and just be free. And that's the ultimate freedom, is to just have the freedom to show up to this life as exactly who you are. And not everyone's gonna, say, yes, howdy doody, welcome to the party. Like they might not like that, but it's also, you can't control that, and you can't live your life, based on what other people or who other people think you should be. It's, what kind of life is that? A challenging one, I know, and I feel like everybody knows because we've all done it. So it's, to be spiritual is just, in a nutshell, is to be.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think maybe it was Wayne Dyer, maybe this is his quote. It's somebody's quote, it's not mine, but that we're not human beings having like a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And the first time I heard that, I was like, it was like a wake up moment for me. I'm like,
Mm.
oh, wow. Yeah, like that makes a lot of sense, but that isn't necessarily an awareness that everybody has. So when you start to kind of get more in touch with that soul, spirit, true essence of what and who we actually are, you can it can rub people some it can rub people the wrong way, or it can make people uncomfortable, or
Hmm.
make fun of you or laugh at you. Like, you're right, it isn't always easy to stand in those truths, as they say.
Yeah. Well, it's the hero's journey, right? That we all have to go on internally, where it's like, yeah, like to be yourself is not the easy path, and then I think to myself, is that a scarcity mindset? But it's not. It's to be yourself is the most beautiful thing. It's the most beautiful gift. It's also, you're going to walk through some fire because you've got a certain amount of, armor or story or belief that you've, placed on yourself based on the external world and what they told you who you should be as you grew up. So in order to shed that and like burn that off, you're going to have to face your shit and like walk through the fire. You can't be asleep and be yourself in the world in your fullness. So it's a journey.
So then, is that kind of your definition of being a rebel, and why you chose to take that angle with the podcast, is kind of rebelling against the box that society's trying to put us in, and actually being who we really are?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think somewhere on my website, I'm not sure if this is exactly what it says, but it's for those brave enough to be exactly who they are, because it's hard, right? And we need support, and that's what the podcast and everything that I put out there is just like a trying to be a constant stream of support for when you are on the journey, because it will test you, it'll challenge you, it'll bring up all your stuff, and we need to be reminded, how brilliant we are in our innate self, and so it's, yeah, and in essence, yes, to your question, that is exactly why I started it.
No, I love that, because and you were talking about this in a recent episode, that it is a process, and it is an uncomfortable process. So I want to talk kind of through some of the obstacles we encounter, like, along the way.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I do believe in past lives, and I would definitely call you an old soul. Like, you have been here before, you are on like the tail end of your journey, and probably not far from like the next level.
Oh.
But I do believe, like, it can look different for different people. So for me, I lived, we'll say, just kind of unaware, in the dark, not really. And it's funny, when you were explaining things in the beginning, you said, "Oh, it sounds all like self-helpy." I was very anti
Mm.
anything self-help, anything personal development, and then 2017 was just a eye-opening year for me on many levels, and I kind of see it a little bit as my like spiritual awakening, and just the way I view the world changed, the way I think changed, like the way I view life and the whole greater purpose of it changed. I opened my mind to concepts like past lives and all this stuff. So when people have, either it's something they've known all along, or a little bit of a wake up aha moment like me, and you're kind of in that decision point of, okay, am I going to try and go down this journey of figuring out who I really am and the life I really want? Or I'm going to just stay in this box where it's much more comfortable and nobody's giving me a hard time. Why do you why do you think it's so different to choose the hard path?
Like, why is it hard, or why is it?
Yeah.
I think that, we adapt as humans. We get comfortable until we get uncomfortable, and then we have to change. And so it's like a dance between it's difficult because it's safe where we are. It's known where we are. And
Mm-hmm.
we do, whatever we can to make sure that we're safe. That's like our built in human mechanism. And so change is, a challenge. It's like pattern interrupt. You're doing something completely different. It's totally unknown. And all of our alarm bells are like beep, 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 like this is danger. And so, of course, it's a challenge, and it like you have to face your stuff. Like it's, you said you woke up, and I think when many people wake up and their awareness, becomes expanded, it can be very love and light and fairy like, which it was for me. I was like, ooh, like, it's like the world is all of this. Like I finally see it, and it was amazing. And I was preaching love and light, and not really, but just to the people that I knew. And then, like, I got hit upside the face with a boulder. And that's like the process of integration and expansion, right? It's a natural, what goes up must come down. And so I think that first off, it's a challenge because it's different and it's unknown, and it's scary, and rightfully so, because it's uncharted territory. So to even step up in the first place and answer the call, like, anyone who does that deserves the hugest kudos, like the biggest pat on the back, because that alone, just the decision to do that is big. And then in a sense, you can't stop the roller coaster that is about to ensue because
Mm-hmm.
once you agree, that energetic frequency that you set off, put in motion, it's going to happen. Like it's like a domino effect. You already tipped the first domino. Now you just got to buckle up and hold on, because it's going to be a ride.
Yes, and which is some of what you were talking about in your episodes of, being patient with yourself and understanding that it's a process. And so then I think sometimes when we're in the middle of it, it's too late to bail. Like I couldn't go back to living the life I was living before. Like there's no way I could do it. But at times it's like it feels near impossible to keep going, and all the
Yeah.
self-doubt, and I'm failing, and I should be further along than I am, and all of that. So it's like that middle part. I don't know. I hope it's the hardest part, because if you almost feel stuck and lost,
Yeah.
yet you also have this awareness that like there's no turning back.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the episodes that I've done that's gotten the most listens. And it wasn't because there was a guest that had like a billion followers or whatever, but it was the one about unstuck yourself or something like this. It was something about being unstuck. And I think that is what so many people feel on this journey, is that they get to the point, which is like the crux of a climb. If you're a rock climber, you eventually get up the rock, and there's one part that's like the most difficult part, and you fight and you struggle, and it's the crux of the climb. Or you could say you're in the deep dark forest, and you're in the middle of it, and it's cold, and it's night, and it's dark, and it's raining, and it's the challenging part. But that's the part where alchemy happens. That's the part where things start to shift. And you do, in essence, just have to hang on. Like you said, you don't really have a choice. You can't go back. You can't unsee what you've seen. And so what you do in that point in the journey is there are a few things you can do, which one is to zoom out and recognize where you're at, because we lose our perspective when we're so in our process. We've got our head like down into the details of the dirt, and we're like, what is happening? How can I fix this? And it's a very, again, a masculine way of looking at it. It's like, I need to fix this. How do I get out of this? And we're contracted. Our energy is contracted. And then we shut the door to universal flow, and we are there for much longer. When I was in a dark night of the soul, I realized that the teacher, like the dark teacher, was going to keep me there until I learned my lesson. And so to get out of it faster is to not resist whatever it is that's coming up. So, some people might call this shadow work or whatever. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's basically facing your shit and facing the emotions and the feelings you've been avoiding, and to kind of harvest the lesson from, what is that emotion telling you? It's probably telling you a story that you've been telling yourself that is out of alignment, or out of, I'm not a fan of the word alignment, it's totally overused, but out of I like to say being clicked in, like it's out of resonance with your soul. So your soul is, your emotions are telling you something like, this isn't right for us, like this isn't true for us, and it's not in resonance with the truth of who we know ourselves to be. And so we have to change that. But first we have to, slow down enough and be in the dark night to listen to what the stories are, to feel the emotions, to just be. And once you go through one dark night, and I've been through a few, you really, once you have the awareness, like this kind of awareness through your first dark night, where you're really awake to what's going on and you're like, this is shit, but I'm going to, keep going. When the next one comes, it's a lot easier, because you're like, okay, I know that I feel this way. It's a shitty time. I also know it's not going to last forever. I also know there's an expansion on the other side of this. And I also know that there's something here for me if I slow down enough and I take a step back and I allow myself to no longer resist what is, and just be in this moment. It will shift a lot faster. So I hope that's like
No,
supportive.
that's super helpful. Okay. And I love that. And I get it conceptually.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think a lot of times it's difficult because we also feel the need, probably because of this masculine energy we've been living in for so long, to, do and work harder. And if you're not where you need to be, then just like work harder and all of that, which I'm going to assume is the masculine energy. But so explain masculine versus feminine, because we're not talking men and women. We're not talking genders. Like from an energetic standpoint, explain the difference between those two.
So if you think about, like, men and women communicate very differently. So if we're, speaking gender normative here, like a man, if a man is communicating with a woman, he is, and I'll tie this back to them being the energies, but a man is like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of this conversation? If it's a problem, I want to fix it. I want to have resolution. And then I want to have an empty space in my mind because I don't want to think about anything after this. Whereas a woman, if she's in conversation, she can be in conversation with her friends, or a person who's got a very feminine energy. She can be, or he can be in conversation with friends for hours, and there's really no resolution at the end, or there's no pointedness. And it's the same with masculine and feminine energies. So the masculine is very much about structure. It's very much about, here's my goal. I'm going to see it through to completion. It's focus. It's linear. It's even for clothing, like they're boxy. It's that kind of like strength, that kind of very physical strength, but in an energetic form, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah,
And then
it does. Yeah.
the feminine is very like chaotic, like she's flowing everywhere, but there's beauty in the chaos. There's a reason for her chaos to be the way that it is. And she's very soft and in her body. And that's where the power comes from, is like the feminine. Like if you're ever feeling like you have disconnected from your heart or your feminine energy, dance, like put on some music and get in your body, or do some yoga or something like this. Anything to kind of allow yourself to land in your body, because the feminine lives there. And the feminine, even if you think about it in the way of sex, is all about receiving, right? And so that is the way, the feminine allows, she receives. And then in a sense, it's like stepping into your sovereign energy, which is like your queen energy. And that is very much like the queen, or the sovereign energy. She won't, can I please have this thing? Or maybe you could give me this $5. She's like, where's my money? And so there's power in both. The feminine is more connected to the heart, I feel, and the masculine is heart as well, but it's very much also the mind. It's like that structure, and the mind is so good at that, and we need them both. But it's just that it's been so imbalanced over in the masculine, that the scales have been tipped too far for too long. And so I think that's why many are feeling that like thirst for femininity, that like even you said, take the pressure off, the thirst for space, for gentleness, for softness, for to go with the flow. That's kind of, I think what people are craving. And innately we know the difference between the two. Like it's you can feel when something has a more feminine energy to it and when something is a little bit more masculine. We know on a level already.
Yeah, I heard it described once as masculine energy is all like straight lines and like
Yeah.
angles, whereas feminine energy is just swirls and loops and kind of all over the place.
Yeah, it's like
And
chaos. It's like, what is that?
so okay. And even just listening to that, like I know that I have been living more in masculine energy and I'm starting to try and get back in touch with more of the feminine energy. But of course it is a process. But are we as individuals leaning more towards the masculine energy because that's the way of the world? Or is the way of the world been in more masculine energy because we as individuals have been?
Mm, that's a good question. That's a thinker. I think that, you know, we are all we're a global collective, right? But
Hmm.
we're the saying, and this is getting super like what's the word that it's overused again, this word, but I can't find another word for it, but oneness, right?
Hmm.
It's like that idea that we are one. So what I do affects the whole, and what you do affects the whole. So it's like we've been in this masculine way of being because that's how we've been as a collective, right? That's just how it's been for many many years, and it's like momentum, right? Like once something
Hmm.
is going, there's a certain build up, there's a certain momentum. It gets kind of ingrained into the way we operate on so many different levels. But I actually would say that I think now I've noticed in some of the clients, if not all, that I see that there is this desire, and I feel it in myself too, to embrace feminine energy, and not even a
Hmm.
desire, but like a thirst for it, because we're done. We're so done. Like so many people they just want to break. And like for myself, I usually wear very muted colors like gray and black, and I'm all about the neutrals and baggy t-shirts and all of those things, and leggings. It's like my uniform, which I feel many people will be able to
I
relate
was
to.
going to say, I think that's everyone's quarantine
Like
uniform.
every single human on the earth right now.
Yeah.
But I feel myself like I want to wear a dress that's florals and flowy, and I want to put my hands in the dirt, and I have flowers all over my house right now, and there is this, without even realizing it, desire and pull to lean more into that feminine energy. So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think it's like a chicken or the egg kind of a thing. It's like I don't think we really know, but I think the reality is we've been in the masculine for a really long time. And what's happening right now, everyone being at home and forced to slow down, I think it's going to really change the energy that we're kind of in. We were already headed toward the feminine energy, but it was feminine energy with a masculine tilt. Like we were
Hmm.
women, but we were, not necessarily just women, but we're in the feminine energy, but we're still grinding and pushing and forcing. This pause of the world is essentially forcing us into feminine energy, slowing us down, if you allow it, of course.
Right, which requires a lot of intuition and I guess trust in your intuition. So
Yeah.
is intuition kind of linked with the feminine energy because we're essentially like receiving
Hmm.
messages, I guess, from our higher self, soul, whatever you want to call it?
Hmm. I love how you say that. That's so true. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think everyone can be intuitive. I think it's like, yeah, I think everyone can be intuitive. I think women are especially more so. just because, we're more in tune with the moon cycles and the earth and all of these things and the energies, just because we have a menstrual cycle, and
Mhm.
every single month, like, I have a mini crisis, like, as I'm sure many people can relate to. I can't remember the book, but it was a woman, and she was like, it was about understanding men, and she was like, you have to understand that women every single month, they have this like mini midlife like a man might have a midlife crisis. We have a mid-month crisis. Like, we break down and all of our stuff comes up and everything's terrible, and we're falling apart into it's like we have a mini death every single month, and we shed away old stories and feelings, and stuff comes up to be cleared, whereas men have that once maybe in their life when they turn 50 or whatever,
Yeah.
and they have a midlife crisis and shit really hits the fan.
Yeah, they
But
buy a sports car, they sleep with a younger woman. It's like
yeah.
one of those two things.
Yes, yeah. And so I think that, yeah, if you're more in your feminine energy, whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. I think you're definitely more in tune with intuition and tapped in. But that being said, it's who, I don't like to leave anybody out. You can be a guy or a girl or whatever. I think it's just, if you allow yourself to exercise the muscle of your intuition, then it will grow stronger over time.
Yeah, that's where I struggle a little bit, because I agree with you. Everyone has access to intuition. But what I think that I do is I will kind of hear those intuitive thoughts, messages, whatever you want to call them. And then my like masculine energy comes in and tries to like logic them away. Like, no, 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 no. Like, that can't work. So it's like step one, I guess, is hearing it. And then step two is trusting it and like choosing it, versus
Yeah.
allowing the kind of overpower masculine energy to come in and be like, nope, nope, nope. This is why you can't do all of these things like X, Y, Z, and ABC.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the hard part. Like, that's the hard part, is trusting and acting on something you can't see or know. It's like I said in the beginning, it's scary to not know. And we like to know, we like to see the step that's in front of us, and, or, the rung that's on the ladder, what's next. But we can't know. We never can know. And so it's scary. It's just scary because we're so used to trusting the mind,
Mm-hmm.
because we've been listening to it for so long, and it's, that's logical. Of course, I should follow that. And of course, sometimes, yes, yeah, sometimes you should. But I think that when we start to listen to our heart and start to listen to those intuitive nudges, that's when we're really, playing with fire in a good way. That's where the power is. And there's, like I said before too, it's you're no longer pushing the boulder up the hill by yourself. It's being pushed up for you, and you kind of just got one finger on it, and you're like, this is great. Like, this boulder is moving and I'm barely trying. I think that's, it's just intuitive nudges and messages from the universe that wants to support you.
Yeah, and I think like this key concept that keeps coming up in my life is really just finding kind of that middle point and that balance between two,
Mm,
seemingly opposites. And so I think one of where we get into trouble is that we just always want to like separate the masculine and the feminine energy.
yeah.
So because we'll say like, oh, well, listen to your heart, listen to your heart. But that's really only in relationships. And then in work career wise, it's supposed to be all logic. And I think if you completely alienate one of the energies in either aspects of life, it can get you into trouble, because sometimes, you can make the best business decisions based off intuition. And sometimes you can let your heart lead you down the wrong path in relationships because you're not looking at the very logical like signs in front of you. So like I think it's
Mm,
kind of embracing both of them, because we have both of those energies within us. And so it's like allowing them both to have a place and a say in the decisions that we make.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely about balance. And I think when we make a decision, perhaps that's not healthy for us in a relationship, and follow our hearts that way, I would almost say that that's not following our hearts. It's following habits. It's following our fear,
Mm.
because when we choose somebody that's not healthy for us, we're choosing based off not our heart and what our heart or soul knows for us, knows that is good for us. Or maybe it might even be good for us to choose the person who's going to turn our world upside down.
Right, because that's the lesson in that moment. And that goes
Yeah.
back to trusting the process.
Yep.
And then you can get into this whole existential thing of like, are we ever even making choices? And like, sometimes I like go into this rabbit hole and I'm like, okay, Casey, just pause.
It's so, you can get really lost in it. And it's so important to say too, I have to point out, like, I'm riffing on this stuff right now, and it's like, what do I know? Like, this is just a feeling that I have, and no one knows for sure. So, someone could be listening to this podcast, and it's like, if it doesn't sound right to you, just leave it, like drop it.
Yeah.
Like, don't
Yep.
just like, you take what resonates and leave the rest. Like, it's so, and that's just listening to your intuition again, right? It's we all have our own kind of perspective on how this all goes, and we have our own paths to walk, and certain things resonate at certain times, and it is almost like you can't make a wrong decision, because you're not, like, what are you here to do, to get to the top of some mountaintop and then you're done? It's not like you're here to just be and enjoy this life, and whatever it comes your way, like, do the best with what you get. And yeah, you can't control it. So I just had to put that caveat in. It's like, you're brilliant, obviously, and I'm just riffing away here, but neither of us really knows for sure.
Oh, for sure. No, I
Yeah.
love that you brought that up because you're absolutely right. And if I listened to myself now, like 10 years ago, I would have turned this off after like the first 5 minutes. I'm like, what the F is she talking about? So I agree. Like, and I think the whole point in even having these conversations or listening to these conversations is to maybe get some new thoughts and new perspectives that we haven't had before. But then you're absolutely right. Take what resonates with you and then leave the rest, because ultimately, like, we've got to trust ourselves and our own knowledge. And I think everybody's truth is different. And that depends on where you are in your journey of life on many different levels. So yeah, I don't pretend to know anything. I just love talking about all of it and
Yes.
questioning.
Me too. Yeah. It's fun to talk about, because I think also, like, there's this part of us in our soul that when we feel it resonates as truth, it's like you can't get enough of it. And I think it's because we've been blocked from it for so long, not blocked, but we've been sleeping maybe, and we're parched for this kind of, it's magic, and I don't say that lightly. It's there's something to it. There's juice to it. It's nourishing. It's supportive information. It's information you can use, and it's kind of like soul food in a way. And yeah, it's fun to talk about it because it's hopeful.
Yes, one of the my favorite things I've heard is that, and I've had two different podcast guests say this, that like it's a remembering. It's
Mm.
something we've always known, but we've forgotten in this human experience here on this life. And so then when you encounter it, and it's kind of that little aha, like remembering, it's like, yeah, you want more, because it's this glimpse into this knowledge you have, but you've lost access to temporarily. And it's kind of like, oh man,
Yeah.
I want to know more.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it's definitely it's like, if you do want to get into past lives or anything like that, it's your soul, like your soul knows. There's a great book, The Untethered Soul.
Yes.
You've probably read it, because that's everybody's reaction. It's like, oh yes, that book.
So I have that book on loan to a friend right now because I constantly loan it out. But that is a book that I probably have every page turned down and all this stuff underlined. And then there's been a couple books in my life that I've read, and I've carried them around in my purse then for like months afterwards, because I just wanted them nearby.
Yeah.
And Untethered Soul was the first book that I did that with.
Yeah, well, I think that speaks to, like, it's that relationship with our soul. It's like that part of ourself that already knows. That's why it's a remembering. and that's like in a sense where the a part of where the real rebel thing came from too. It's like, we're told the ways that we're supposed to be in this world. We're told how it is, and it doesn't matter whether it's through corporations or organized religion or whatever, social media. We've been fed these messages and these stories about this is what it is to be human, and this is what you do, and this is what your life is supposed to look like, and if you don't do this by this time, then you're failing, and all this stuff. And it's like we're totally living on the external. We're looking to the external world for approval. We're looking at it, to tell us when we can jump and what's correct for us. And books like that bring us back into ourselves. Like I like to say, there is this wise version of you, or this wise being inside you all the time, and they're always there, and they're just chilling, and you can slow down and tap into that wisdom at any time. It's always there. And when you do, there's always this like sage advice you'll get, or it will say something like, you're okay, just chill, like you'll be fine. And we all have that. And I think that's why books, that's the remembering in books like The Untethered Soul. They bring you back to that place, and it just feels so good. Like it just, like I say, it's like you've been parched and finally you're drinking water, and it's you just want more.
For sure. But like also to go back to kind of our earlier point of it's a process and everyone's in their own place of the process. And so take what resonates with you and leave the rest. Like I remember loaning that book out to an old coworker and thinking, oh my God, this is absolutely going to help her so much, because she was all in her head about stuff and worrying about this stuff. And I just thought this is going to be such a relief for her, and she's just going to love it. And she gave it back to me. She's like, yeah, it was good. It was kind of hard to read. And I was just like, what? Like, this didn't blow your mind. And so it was like this great lesson of, okay, it's timing. Like it's timing for everybody. And so you can't, just because something blew my mind doesn't mean it's going to do the same for anybody else, nor should it. It's all timing.
And I think too, as like empaths, to your point, we empaths are sensitive people, or people who just want to help, whether you identify as like a healer or whatever. It doesn't matter. If you just want to help people, you're a kind person. We often have that story of like, or that feeling, the pressure we put on ourselves, like I have to help everybody. I have to like, and you have this podcast. By virtue of you having this podcast, I know that like you're that way. And probably most people listening to this also, like you just want to help, and you feel like it's all on your shoulders to show people the books or the podcasts or whatever. And I remember, I think it was 2 years ago or so, I was always trying to help my family. I was always trying to help them to see the light, and, feeling like, and I was so holier than thou. It's like, I know your path, and like, here's the way. And it's like, like, no, like,
because that's like people denying them their own journey.
Yeah, it's like you have to trust people that they're going to be okay, and their journey is their own. And meet people and see them as their highest self, wherever they are, right? See them at their most, like their highest potential. Talk to them at their highest potential. See them as that. Give off energy when you're looking and talking to them like they already are, that, because they are. And the more you resonate and mirror that back to them, the more that, will support them, if anything. But you don't need to like be like, this is where you're going next, and this is what you should do. If they're in a hard time, it's probably because there's something to learn. And it's like, who are we to take them out of that dark night? Like maybe they need to be in the dark night. And it's hard to watch, but what it does is our desire to change it is just shedding light on the fact that we are still uncomfortable with that emotion, whatever it is they're feeling in ourselves. Like we haven't integrated that emotion. Let's say they're going through a depression or they're sad. We haven't integrated sadness in ourselves. We're not comfortable with sadness yet, which means there's still some work to do around witnessing and holding space for the sadness within ourselves. So yeah, everyone's got their own path. Like they just need to jam on and just keep walking.
I love that. I had never really thought of it from that perspective before. I had always kind of taken more the approach of, if I'm think somebody else should be anywhere other than where they are in their journey of life, then that's essentially me judging them. Like that's judgment. And that's
Mm.
not any of my business to do. But I love that what you just said is more, it's whatever feeling they're feeling. If I'm not okay with that, then that's more work I've got to do with myself, that I haven't become comfortable with that emotion just kind of existing within this life. I like that a lot.
Yeah, well, it's more helpful, I think, that way, like for your own self. And it's like, and you know, and you could, and we're not broken either. But if there's a sadness that's coming up, or say for me, like it was really tough. My boyfriend, he's very good at being angry. Like he has no problem like getting really angry and being like, this stupid thing or whatever, right? And for me, being very sensitive, it makes me, and I'm working on it, makes me kind of uncomfortable because I'm like, this doesn't feel good. But then the question I ask myself is like, well, am I even okay with my own anger? Like it's totally healthy to express
Ah,
anger when it comes up, when someone's pissed or when you're pissed, be pissed as long as you're not hurting anybody. But we have this idea, it's like, oh, to be angry is to put off the bad energy and da da da. It's like, no, it's just about not resisting what is. And so if you're mad, be mad. And that's for a lot of women, we're told that
yep.
it's not okay for us to be angry. It's okay for us to be sad, and it's not okay for us to be angry. And for men, it's okay for them to be angry, but it's not okay for them to be sad, which is why men often get very uncomfortable when their girlfriend or partner is in a puddle of tears
Mm-hmm.
in front of them, because they don't know how to handle it, because they don't know how to handle it within themselves.
Oh man, you just served as such a mirror for me because so my boyfriend also has no problem being angry.
Yeah.
And this all the same thing when he's even just telling me a story. He's very rarely angry at me, but if he's angry about a situation and I can sense the anger as he's like getting all,
Yeah.
hyped up telling me about something, I feel very uncomfortable. But I've been thinking, oh, he just like I've been taking more the holier than thou approach of like, oh, he just hasn't found a way to like work through that anger. No, 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 no,
Mm.
no. And I know this. It's not about him. It's about me. Like I'm not comfortable with the anger.
Yeah.
Wow. That was just like a big aha moment.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, well, I mean, it's along the same lines of like it's that we in the self-help realm or whatever, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, we have a lot of, or there is a lot of shame around the feelings like anger. It's almost not everywhere, but in many places, it's like, if you're getting angry, you're not at peace or whatever, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
you also have to be a human. Yes, you are, a soul in your body. And the other part of that is like you're in your body. Yes, you're a soul, you're in your body. So being in your body means you're a human. It means you experience human emotions like jealousy, rage, frustration, sadness. All of these things, they're totally human. And when we deny ourselves the opportunity to have this human experience, we're denying our soul growth and learning and
Mm-hmm.
all of those things too. So it's like, if you're mad, be mad. I started doing, I've been talking about it a lot, the class. And I didn't do it for a while because I thought, I was like, it's just another one of those things, with yoga pants and essential oils. Like it's just another one of those, which, and that's I lost out by judging it before I actually did it, because it's incredibly helpful way of moving that shifts energy out of your body. And I've been doing the class for 2 weeks now, and there are times during the workouts where I am just raging mad and letting energy out because it's been stuck, and it's such a common
Wow.
thing. Yeah, so it's just, yeah, I think many women, need to be reminded, like, you can get pissed. It's okay.
Oh, for sure. I had a whole episode on that. A woman, a journalist and author, Soraya Shamali, wrote this book, Rage Becomes Her, The Power of Women's Anger. And I mean,
Mm,
reading that book even just gets you angry, listening to all the ways in which women are brought up and taught that we don't feel anger, and then kind of what that
yeah.
sets us up for and stuff. So, wow. Okay. I'm definitely going to look into the class. So, I want to ask you about the Oracle decks so you pull cards from these Oracle decks, which I'm familiar with tarot cards, but I'd never heard before of Oracle decks. Like, what are they?
Honestly, I don't really know. I just
I love that even more. Okay.
they're just I got my first one right after, I think right after or before I went through a breakup, and it was called the Sacred Rebels Oracle, and they're just cards, and I've seen them before around, but you pull a card and it's a picture, and it in the little book it comes with, it has a description, and it's like sage wisdom, and it's the idea is that it's here to send you a message. So your energy or whatever, your guides, it's a form of communication between yourself and whatever the world is out there that you want to call it, your guides, source, whatever. And it's just a way for those energies to communicate with you and support you. Because if you really want to get into it, it's like we all, and some people believe that we have our guides with us at all
Mm-hmm.
times, and they want to communicate to us. They love us. They want to support us, and so it's like this is a way that they can do that. I just kind of fell into it. I thought these are really cool. I really like the messages. And at the very least, if you're super not into this stuff and you're just like, that's weird, they're beautiful messages. At the
They
very
are,
least,
yeah.
if you're having a bad day, you pull a card and it gives you a beautiful message. And I mean, what bad can come of that?
Yeah. It's funny. You saying about like that our guides are always with us and want to communicate with us. And I agree with that. And, um, I've heard that they'll find however you pay attention, that's how they'll
Mm.
continue to communicate with you. So like mine, it's numbers a lot too. Like
Mhm.
I see 11s a lot, or I'll see 224,
Yeah.
like two twos and two fours or some combination of that all the time. And so I know they're trying to tell me something, but I don't know what it is. So I'm like, maybe I should get an oracle deck so that they've got words to work with.
Yes. Well, yeah, it's like, what are you saying with all these
Yeah.
triple numbers?
I'm
Like,
like, okay, 224, 442, got it, but what?
what are you saying? Yeah, I think that, I mean, and yeah, they can communicate in so many ways. And, it could be through cards. For me, I dream just about every night, and I have like a deep communications through my dreams. I have ever since I was a kid. So it could be that. I also have, like, I think I'm clairaudient, which means like you hear things, and now I'm making myself sound totally nuts, but
That's okay.
there's
I like
like,
it.
like the resonance changes in my ear. And sometimes there's like it rings at different levels, which could also be tinnitus or whatever, but that's a different story. But they can communicate with you. For example, there was a listener of the Real Rebel podcast that she was communicating with me, and instantly I felt like a connection with her. She's was wonderful, and I was going to actually have her over, and I messaged her, and her mom answered the message and said, she's passed away. She got in a car accident, because she was local to my area. And then I went up for, I was going to go to her funeral, but I couldn't even go. I couldn't get out of the car because I just was in tears. Like, and I didn't even cry this much when my great grandfather passed away when I was a kid. I didn't even, have this level of deep grieving. And ever since then, whenever I am, you know, I went to go up and like pay homage to her, because she passed away in a car accident driving up to Squamish, which is a beautiful mountain area in BC, and just outside of Vancouver. And I always go up there, and I knew that where she kind of would go, and so I went to the river that was around the area where she would go, and I went to go pay homage to her. And on the way, I just started to cry, burst out in tears. So I pulled over at Shannon Falls, which is on the way. And I was just, sitting there crying. And I think I was also changing my clothes for some reason. But there was a bluebird that popped up right in front of me, like blaringly in front of me. And then ever since then, for, it's been, I think, maybe 9 months or so. Every time I'm thinking of a creative idea or anything that has to do with fun, and I'm feeling like I need to bring this idea into the world, which is often the times when we doubt ourselves the most, if we're doing
Mhm.
something new or bringing a creation into the world, and we can very easily be like, no, 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 I'm not going to do that. anytime that I would be thinking those thoughts, I would get a bluebird would just pop up right in front of me. It just in it eerily often. Like, and so to me, that was her communicating with me to keep going. So it can come out in many ways. The idea is if it feels like something for you, it's something. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be oracle cards. It doesn't have to be dreams. It doesn't have to be, you know, numbers. It can be, we kind of feel it, like we innately know. It can come through animals or whatever, but if it hits you and it resonates with you, it's probably something.
Yes, I agree. And that goes back to that, awareness and trust with
Hmm.
ourselves and specifically our intuition.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to close out by asking you if who are some of the the people or the work that have inspired you the most or taught you the most. So, you mentioned you're
Ooh,
currently doing the class. I've heard you mention Byron Katie before. I love
yeah.
her work, but who where who are some people that have taught you, given you the most of those aha moments?
Yeah. There's a few that kind of came up. I had a really dark night of the soul in 2017. Well, it was 2000 end of 2017, 2018. And Lynette Duncan from Oracle of Your Soul online, she if you ever want to have a very nourishing session, go sit down in session with Lynette. And she's pulls cards for you, and she's just a beautiful, beautiful soul. So she was really helpful. Also, my mentor, Kylie Redhead, she has the new school for inspired work. I've had her on the podcast twice. She was really helpful. The book, The Untethered Soul, was really helpful. Aaron Rose he's amazing. He was incredibly helpful. And who else? Mark Groves, Create the Love. He's been on the podcast
Hmm.
as well. But a lot of the teachers that showed up for me were kind of more spiritually oriented, which was a bit surprising for me because I did a lot of judgment around the whole spiritual world, and I it definitely flipped it on its head for me. But
Which
yeah, I would.
I think that is just so by design. Just like I was all judgy about self-help and personal development, and
Mhm.
now that's my world. Like I think there's a lot of insight in things that we just have some adverse reaction to kind of for no reason. I think a
Yes.
lot of times that's almost like the direction we actually need to go in.
Oh, absolutely. And as you were saying that too, speaking of like incredible spiritual people that put things into a really easy way to digest is Lee Harris. I've had him on the podcast also. He is just remarkable. If you listen to he does on YouTube, he does a monthly energy update where he kind of taps into the energy. And what I like so much about Lee is that he puts it in a very succinct, clear way. And he says it with such ownership of like, this is what I do. And he's been doing it for a long time, and he's beautiful at expressing it. And I think that that's something that I admire because, to own something that many people, you know, are judgmental towards is a very powerful thing, and it just gives other people permission to do the same for themselves. So I would put like a gold star beside because he's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Seriously, Katie, this was a great conversation. I absolutely loved it. Thank you for coming on the show. Tell everybody where they can find your podcast, find you, find your writing, follow you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's Real Rebel Podcast everywhere. So at Real Rebel Podcast on Instagram and realrebelpodcast.com on the interwebs. And from there, you can pretty much get wherever it is you need to go in the realm of the Real Rebel Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. You're awesome. You're great at this. This is
Oh,
this is fun.
thanks. All right, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this episode, then please make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and please, please, please take a moment to give a rating or even write a short review on whatever app you are listening on. If that app takes ratings and reviews, it means the world to me, and it just matters a lot in the podcasting algorithm world. So if you could take a second to rate and review the show, I would very much appreciate it. Lots of good guests coming up. I'm actually like booked with interviews next week. I'm knocking a bunch of them out. So I'm really excited about all these conversations. So again, make sure you are subscribed so that you don't miss them. You can also follow the podcast on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at The Better You Podcast. And if you have any feedback for me or topic suggestions or guest suggestions, then by all means email me at thebetteryoupodcast@gmail.com. That is it. Thank you so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.